Hello people, there are 9 known mainline regions in the Pokemon world as of the making of this video. While there is obviously an established structure that most Pokemon games follow, each game has a unique story. Even when there's numerous similarities, the games still present different themes, and the narrative, characters, and world building all attempt to convey a different message with each region's story. In this video, I'll be exploring just that. What is the main theme of each region? What is the point that the game wants to make with each new installment? Some regions' themes are very obvious, but others require a little more digging and analyzing. Of course, I also have to mention that although this is based on reasonable observation, my reading of each Pokemon game story is inherently biased and not everyone might agree 100%. This is completely fine and I encourage discussion in the comments, but please keep it civil. With that being said, let's take it all the way back to the original region of the Pokemon world, the Kanto region. The Kanto region is featured in Pokemon Red, Blue, and the Japanese counterparts, Yellow, Fire Red, Leaf Green, Let's Go Pikachu, and Let's Go Eevee, and is based on the real-life Kanto region of Japan. Many people would say that the main themes of Kanto are science and technology. After all, it's the region that introduced us to the many advanced technologies of the Pokemon world, like teleporting pads, Pokeballs, and the Pokédex. There's also the story of Mewtwo and how it was cloned by humans from Mew's DNA, and the tech company in the form of Silphco also plays a fairly large role in the story. This all makes sense, but personally, I'm not convinced that having a distinct sci-fi motif was 100% intentional here. At the time Kanto was created, the Pokemon franchise was brand new and its foundations were still being laid, and so I'm inclined to say that the basic theme of growing up and leaving on an adventure is actually the main one here. In other words, the story is about the threshold between childhood and maturity. This is an idea that would go on to be a theme in all subsequent Pokemon games, but Kanto introduced it and perhaps put a little bit more emphasis on it, having the champion be your childhood rival who you've competed with throughout the story and now finally defeating and surpassing for good and all. It's a textbook coming-of-age story. The Johto region. This region is featured in Pokemon Gold, Silver, Crystal, Heart Gold, and Soul Silver, and is based on the Kansai region of Japan. In contrast to the technological developments of Kanto, Johto, the region right west to it, has a more traditional motif. This makes sense since the real-life region that inspired Kanto has the modern capital of Japan, Tokyo, while the region that inspired Johto has the old capital of Japan, Kyoto. Johto is also intrinsically linked to Kanto. All Johto games offer the option to visit Kanto in their post-games, and the two share the same Pokemon League situated at the Indigo Plateau in between the two regions. Johto's traditional flair and its link to its past are rooted within many aspects of the region, and I do believe it to be its main theme. There's the legend of Ho-Oh, Lugia, and the legendary beasts in Ecruteak City, a story that plays a crucial role in the local culture. There's the Kimono Girls and their rituals to summon the legendary Pokemon in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, there's Celebi and its shrine in Ilex Forest, and there's the inclusion of Kurt, an old craftsman who makes artisanal Pokeballs. Every region has its legends and legendary Pokemon, but Johto treats them with a sort of reverence, and their worshipping and aesthetics are partly inspired by real Japanese traditions. The Hoenn region. Featured in Pokemon Ruby, Sapphire, Emerald, Omega Ruby, and Alpha Sapphire, the Hoenn region is inspired by the real-life Kyushu region of Japan, along with some of Japan's southernmost islands like Okinawa. The themes of this subtropical island region revolve around environmentalism, balance between humans and nature, and natural disasters. The main plot features extremist factions of eco-terrorists in Team Magma and Team Aqua, who each aim to expand either the land or the sea respectively. It is implied that Team Magma wants to increase the landmass in order to create more room for human development. In contrast, Team Aqua seems to want to expand the sea to increase the habitat of sea Pokemon and revert the world to a more primordial state. The main legendary trio of the region each represent an aspect of the planet's environment, with Groudon representing the lithosphere, the land, Kyogre dwelling in the hydrosphere, the oceans, and Rayquaza's domain being the atmosphere, in the sky. The region also emphasizes weather effects in battle, and its local professor, Professor Birch, specializes in Pokemon habitats. Additionally, the postgame of Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire features the Delta episode, a story about a giant asteroid on a collision course with Hoenn. The Sinnoh region. This cold region appears in Pokemon Diamond, Pearl, Platinum, Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, and Legends Arceus back when it was known as Mossui, and is based on Hokkaido, Japan's northernmost island. The Sinnoh region is home to the legendary Creation Trio, also known as Pokemon of Myth, along with their creator, the mythical Arceus, the Alpha Pokemon. These Pokemon are said to have played major roles in the creation of the whole universe, with Arceus being the first thing to come into existence. Sinnoh's rich mythology is its main theme. The most notable places in the region, like its 3 lakes and Spear Pillar at the summit of Mount Coronet, all have links to legendary Pokemon that are said to have created Sinnoh and the rest of the Pokemon world. There's also the fact that the region's champion, Cynthia, is dedicated to uncovering Sinnoh's myth. Pokemon Legends Arceus is a prequel game that delves deeper into the region's past and its many legends in a time when it was still known as the Hisui region. The Unova region. The first region to not be based on a place in Japan, Unova is featured in Pokemon Black, White, Black 2, White 2, and Unova's Blueberry Academy appears in the Indigo Disc DLC for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. The region is based mainly on the state of New York, but also features areas inspired by other locations in the United States. Unova's theme is very obvious: truth versus ideals, realism versus idealism, or even traditionalism versus progressivism. To put it simply, the story of Unova is about what is known to have worked in the past, or the status quo, going up against what has the potential to work in the future: change. This is stated in the game through the tale of the two brothers. It is said that these brothers created the Unova region in the past with the help of a powerful dragon Pokemon. When the two couldn't agree on how to rule, one prioritizing truth while the other prioritized ideals, their Pokemon split into two and became the legendary Reshiram and Zekrom, with Kyurem being the leftover husk of the original dragon. The events in modern-day Unova revolve around a group that attempts to manipulate the populace through the guise of wanting to liberate Pokemon. This challenging of the status quo is put into question, and in the end, the narrative pushes the idea that things aren't so black and white, and both perspectives of a conflict have both pros and cons. So maybe Unova's theme is twofold. Yes, it's about truth versus ideals, but it's also about understanding shades of grey and not going to extremes. The Kalos region. The Kalos region is featured in Pokemon X, Y, and its largest city, Lumiose, is the main setting of the upcoming Pokemon Legends ZA. It is the first region based on a place in Europe, France. People who worked on the games have stated that a huge theme in Kalos is beauty. After all, France has a connection with beauty, and X and Y featured a major visual overhaul, being the first main series games to feature fully 3D graphics. Also, it is my personal opinion that Kalos is the most beautiful region in the series. Gen 6 doesn't necessarily have my favorite graphics and visual style, but almost every area in Kalos oozes with style and aesthetic flavor. The architecture is often detailed, intricate, and ornate, and every route is unique and a joy to explore. Truly a picturesque region. In spite of this undoubted connection to beauty, there's also a theme of coexistence. Lysander's plans and motivation, especially in side media, is heavily implied to be a response to class division in society. There's also the ending song for Pokemon X and Y, Kiseki. Its lyrics are all about creating a world for everyone and getting along. This theme is probably loosely inspired by France's social issues in the past and the French Revolution. The Alola region. Alola is explored in Pokemon Sun, Moon, Ultra Sun, and Ultra Moon, and is based on Hawaii. The themes of this region are similar to both Johto and Unova. Like Johto, Alola's traditions and culture are at the forefront. And sort of like Unova, the story of Alola pits tradition against modernization. You see, Alola is an archipelago region that is somewhat isolated from the rest of the world. It has its own unique culture that goes way back, and so being a trainer here is totally different from any other region. Instead of having the modern gyms, gym leaders, and an official Pokemon League, Alola has an ancient tradition called the Island Challenge. These cultural notions are challenged in two major ways in the story. Firstly, there's Team Skull, a group of pseudo-antagonists who is made up of trainers that did not succeed in their Island Challenge and became social outcasts. They do not have the same respect for Alola's traditions as everyone else. Secondly, there's Professor Kukui, the region's professor who wants to establish a Pokemon League in Alola and attempts to blend the local Island Challenge with the more traditional league structure of other regions. He doesn't want Alola to lag behind and wants it to have all the bells and whistles of more famous regions while still preserving a local culture. A perhaps less profound theme in Alola is space and aliens. This region introduced Ultra Beasts, a category of Pokemon that came from far-off worlds through Ultra Wormholes. Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon also features the Ultra Recon Squad, made up of alien-like people from a different world devoid of light. Alola's main legendary trio is made up of Pokemon that all came from Ultra Space and do not naturally hail from this world. The Galar region. Galar is the region seen in Pokemon Sword, Shield, and their Isle of Armor and Crown Tundra DLCs, and is based on the UK. In the Galar Pokemon League, there's lots of characters that are retiring, have already retired, and or passed down their positions to the younger generation. This, in my opinion, makes Legacy the main theme of the region. We have Leon stepping down as champion when you defeat him and earn the title. There's Sonia replacing Professor Magnolia as the new regional professor, and Hop replacing her as the new professor's assistant. There's Opal and Pierce handing down their positions as gym leaders to Beat and Marnie respectively. There's the retired Mustard and Peony in the DLCs, and there's the up-and-coming Clara and Avery who aim to become gym leaders. In terms of Galar's lore, we have the forgotten legends of the Darkest Day and the King of Bountiful Harvests that are reborn in modern day through the player's actions. carrying their legacy. Galar is all about passing down the torch. We finally reached the Paldea region, seen in Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, with its underdepths becoming explorable in the Indigo Disc DLC. Paldea is based on the Iberian Peninsula, so that's Spain and Portugal, for those not in the know. Paldea's story makes a big deal out of the concept of treasure. The player's adventure is called a treasure hunt, there's a prominent treasure chest Pokemon, and the region's history and lore heavily revolve around the exploration of Area Zero in search of great treasure. There's also the legendary quartet known as the Treasures of Ruin. The choice to base Paldea off of Spain and Portugal inevitably calls to mind their history of bloody colonialism, exploration of the New World. Even more obviously, the title of the two-part DLC for Scarlet and Violet is The Hidden Treasure of Area Zero, referring to Terrapagos. Briar's whole character is the trope of a modern-day explorer attempting to finish the job of an old explorer, in this case Heath, and finding a legendary treasure that was deemed a hoax in the modern day. There's also the obvious time travel past versus future motif of Scarlet and Violet, but I'd say that's more of a surface level stylistic choice, rather than a deeply rooted narrative theme. That whole plot thread is sort of self-contained and doesn't really impact the region as a whole. There's also Kitakami, a land from the TealMask DLC for Scarlet and Violet. It's never referred to as a region, but it's also not specified to be part of any known region, so it's a weird gray area. It's based on a real city also called Kitakami in the Iwate prefecture of Japan. Since you only spend half of the story of the Scarlet and Violet DLC there, it doesn't have as strong of a theme as any of the actual regions, but if I had to pick one, I'd say it's pretty much the same as Johto's, local traditions and legends, with the exception that everyone got the legend totally backwards. So to recap, Kanto's themes are childhood and growing up, Johto's theme is tradition, Hoenn's themes are nature and the environment, Sinnoh's theme is mythology, Unova's themes are contrasting extremes and moral grayness, Kalos's themes are beauty and coexistence, Alola's themes are maintaining tradition in a modern world, but also space and aliens, Galar's theme is legacy, and Paldea's themes are treasure and exploration. At least the way I see it. Thank you so much for watching.